kick it off.
All right, well, thank you everybody for coming today. I'm very excited and delighted to have Thomas Winters from Cisco. His role is Senior Director of Digital Sales Strategy worldwide. And I know he's going to have a great presentation. How we want to do this, we'll get 30 minutes of presentation and 10 minutes of Q&A at the end. I have a handheld mic here, so I'll come around with it, and I'm sure we'll have a lively discussion with it. Without further ado, thank you, Thomas.
Thank you. So, yeah, I lead a team in Cisco who drives digital strategy, and what does that mean? So we're thinking about what will happen in the future to selling, and how will selling have to change that we can continue to serve our customers. I'm 16 years with Cisco. I run sales teams. I was an accidental marketeer because the person who ran the country was my boss when I was there as a business development manager at the 2000 tech bubble burst. He was a hardcore New Yorker salesman, and he decided when he had to lay off people, he would first lay off all the marketing department and said, do that on the side. So that's how I got into marketing. I complained too much during my sales times about broken processes in the company. Then they made me run sales operations for Europe at the time. And then somehow I got asked to lead what you would probably call today a digital transformation. We called it commerce transformation. So we were quasi the inventor of e-commerce in the 90s to manage our hyper growth, and invented what we called the router store at that time. It became bigger and bigger and bigger, and at one point in time we had to replace it for something new. So the CPQ players were not around, like the Aptus or the Steelbricks of the world, so we built it ourselves. And I got this call, Thomas, would you come in and drive the adoption of our new commerce workspace? It will be probably like a one-year gig with probably 10 people. It's looking really good, maybe something different. You could even take it as an assignment and go back to your old job. And I was kind of done with that, done before, and said, no, I take it as a real job. Turned out into a 5-year gig with 300 people, but we made it happen. We took the platform as it showed, who could only process 11% of total orders, which was the reason why it didn't go anywhere. Convince IT that actually it needs work, and it's not just the customer. And then drive this through our 30 to 50,000 partners and all our 20,000 salespeople who all had to change. So that's when I came forward with my change management knowledge. But then we said, so wouldn't it be great if we actually build the tools business-led that sales needs and not IT and ops-led? And because that sometimes turns out that if the tail wags the dog, and in some instances even the tail decouples from the dog and lives his own life, that doesn't always produce the solutions that we want. But I mean, Cisco is a large company, right? We're 80,000 people, 20,000 in sales. So what I do is probably 30% is forward-thinking, innovation, synthesizing what's going on in the world, being it consultants, being it leading companies like inside sales, and then turning this into what does it mean for us? Because just our size defines that certain things just happen to be a bit special, and also our go-to-market. And 30% is a constant game of whack-a-mole, because we have a lot of very smart people in the company and they have a lot of great ideas. And they will go out and try to buy from a vendor who has the next best thing that will solve world hunger, and they will have a few dollars on the side. And the as-a-service model enabled that tremendously. So I can swipe a credit card and introduce a new tool which is not security compliant, which will not do the trick, and which about after the initial hype of excitement of the first 3 months will start creating data threading issue, and cost will go through the roof and value will go to the bottom. But obviously the person who hopes to get promoted by bringing in this curing world hunger tool doesn't see it that way. So that 30% is valuing the individual innovation that's going on, because a lot of that stuff is actually really cool, and they had the same ideas as the mothership had, and so that's not better or worse. But we're trying to do, if to bring it in, to align it, to bring it together, that we're being able to drive a somewhat homogeneous and seamless experience. Now, when you ask Matt, who is in sales, he would say that we suck, but when we see where we stand a few years ago, we suck much less. And it is just the size of the beast that will make this a Sisyphus work forever and their days. I'm extremely excited. like today when you let me talk about the ideas and the innovation, and there are days where I'm banging my head against the brick wall and want to die because it's such a horrible job. But that comes with innovation. And the last 30% would be, how do we get our colleagues in operations in IT to work with us closely, to make it real user-centric, to align the business priorities with the possibilities that technology can do, that we're really moving in orchestration. So that's what I do, and today I thought I'll speak a little bit about what we do, how we get there, and then hopefully leave you with some ideas. So this is one of our senior sales leaders, and he just put this blog out a few weeks ago where he talks about that the magic ingredient to build success in the future is to have a plan, a digital plan. Now, there is the company digital plan, but there's also the individual digital plan. Who of you hasn't put thought in how you show up in the digital world, how you curate your digital image? Quick show of hands. So that's more than average, which is about 20%. Who of you has recently looked at your public Facebook profile? That's something very few people do. It's about 15%. Because one of the things is people look you up on the internet, and you might curate your LinkedIn profile really well, but what they also look you up is how you show up on Facebook, all the stuff you accidentally publicly shared, especially those sites that only your colleague goes or your friend, you would never go there. When you click some like by accident, that will often show up in your public profile. So that's actually a worthwhile exercise to do. Just every few months, just check your own profile. I find it's a very helpful exercise to put a little bit of energy in curating your digital footprint. Now, I'm teaching this to our sales organization, but it's something, just as a professional, it's a good thing to do because you win so much when you get introduced to new people. You have an advantage of credibility or being perceived as something without a lot of work, and it replicates out really well. So I started experimenting with Twitter myself only when I took the job. Before, I didn't do a lot. I mean, I knew what it was. I log on to everything, but I didn't really found the platform. And then I started curating a digital persona just for the fun of it. And then what I found in events like this is actually quite cool. You start networking with people you don't meet, and then when you meet them, it's almost like meeting somebody you already know. And I'm not exactly introvert, but it's still kind of a nice thing. You always think you know somebody. Now, why this is relevant in the sales world, there's a lot of flavors of that, and I took this from Accenture. That's their newest version, how the customers change. I call this the 8. McKinsey has one that looks more like an octopus, but what it basically says, the customer doesn't follow any structured process anymore, and they do just whatever they want, so you can't force them in a funnel. We have seen a few great slides on how the funnel is a mess, including the French horn this morning, but that requires us in sales just come up with new ways to deal with a customer. And it's not only new ways to deal with the customer, might even be a new customer. And we are an enterprise sales organization to a large extent. That's our heritage. We grew out of serving big companies with sophisticated products, and there's a lot of relationship sale going on. And when like the millennials, let's have them stand up, let's applaud them, but they're not making the calls here. Now, when he grows up, more mobile, I'm seeing it every day, he's already more connected than a lot of people. He'll be very empowered. I guess this whole thing with the millennial, you can't yank me around, will just get even stronger. And he will definitely be digital. So what does that requires for salespeople? And unless you're significantly over 60, you'll probably not be able to ride it out, because we'll see this shift in decision makers in the next 5 years. So I encourage each and every one of you to just start thinking about these aspects on a very personal level. There's an aspect the company needs to do, and that's harder, and it costs more money, and it's more complex, but everyone can do a lot in this front very easily. Just start showing up and connecting. So a great friend of mine, Bruce, who's just a little over 40, we got him to tweet together this week. And he was very excited. He's tweeting and shares his tweets. And yesterday night after the bar, we thought, we'll take it to the next level. Then, what's there? Leslie Leslie and I had this idea, wouldn't it be a great idea if we also add a URL to Bruce's tweet activity? And then so she started introducing him to the CEO, Dave Elkington, as Uncle Brucey. So I thought, why don't we just book UncleBrucey.com as a URL, which points back to his Twitter feed, and it's activated since yesterday night. So if you want to go look up what Bruce does on Twitter, UncleBrucey.com it is. So I told you I'm coming back after you. You can't tweet, Bruce. But on a serious note, there's some shifts going on, and most of you have seen the statistics. One, and this is what Pierre Nanterre stated at the World Economic Forum in January. It's kind of frightening, right? When we talk about what it means for the company, the digitization, if you're not part of it, it's the digitize or die motion. And that's something, again, the company got to do, but you as an individual. 80% of customers will look you up before you have the first meeting. Well, great. What do you do about it? Back to curating your digital profile. The other side is only 29% of the salespeople show up prepared when they go meet the customer. Well, that translates into they expect you to look them up as well, because there's so much you can find online about each and every one of us, even if we're not actively curating a profile and making it easy to engage. You find all these things out, and Inside Sales does a great job in what's the technical term? I don't think it's digital stalking, but just understanding more about the potential customer or current customer that you can engage in a conversation easier. That would also include maybe reading a 10K statement of your client, the earnings press release, just to find out what people do. One thing I started to do recently, and again, I'm experimenting with this stuff. I wrote a little API, so SC will be proud of me, that takes the Twitter feeds of all our senior executives and pipes it into a business messaging room. Our tool is called Spark, but it works with pretty much anything. So I have a curated feed of what my senior executives in the company tweet. You could do that very easily with your customer, your prospects, and you have an immediate notion of where they stand with the stuff they publicly share about themselves. That leads to a great conversation in the elevator. I saw your tweet. Jill Rowley refers to herself as a social selling evangelist. One of the tricks she taught me is in Twitter you can actually have an individual account set up that it sends you notifications. So that you get a push on somebody you really care for, when the person tweets. Because I'm still not into reading tweets all day long. So for some people I'm really interested, like our CEO. I get a push notification when he tweets something. So, and a few other people I'm interested for whatever reason. Next horrible thing. CEB Global put out the book. They have two books, Challenger Sale and Challenger Customer. And the customer, they state this stat that in the average B2B decision these days, 5.4 people are involved. There's no more decision maker. And let's be real, if we're talking multi-million-dollar deal, it's probably more like 15 and 20 people. And they all can say no, but nobody can say yes. And only if they all say yes at the same time, your project will happen. So with that, your biggest competitor is not your competitor, it's the dysfunction of your customer's internal organization. And again, that requires you to know more about your customer, each and every one of them, 15 times than before. They expect more service, they expect you to know them, they expect everything. By the way, they want to pay less because now we're in a SaaS model, so no more $30 million in the huge account team. And, by the way, 67% of the buying cycle they've already done, so they basically know what they want. So it's really difficult as a salesperson to then make a big impact. There was a discussion, are people buying digital or not? Yes, they do, and no, they don't. I agree that in a complex deal, you will still need advice, and you will still need a salesperson to interact with. Now, that salesperson doesn't have to be physical with you in the same place. Even though it's a complex deal, and this is where I submit to you, and feel free to disagree or agree with me, that we'll see a rise of inside sales into the enterprise accounts, and not just at the bottom end. So it will become more of a blend of an inside sales, outside sales motion, because today inside sales is just a cheaper sales model. But listening to the visions of InsideSales.com, which I agree, it's also a more sophisticated sales model and will allow you to do more things. So I had the pleasure of meeting Mick Hollison and Jim Steele a while ago. So we were working for about 6 months on a project with InsideSales.com. And you know how it is, Cisco, prestigious client, everybody would like to do business with us. We're very humble about it. But that means every vendor wants to bring every executive they have to a meeting with even more senior people. And I said, like, I can buy my own lunch. I don't need you to show up. I'd rather actually have you communicate with me via Spark, which is kind of our corporate version of WhatsApp. It's actually a great tool. We're happy to send you a salesperson to sell to you. I said, I don't want to do emails. I don't want to meet. Bruce, can we just stay in touch via Spark? And most of his colleagues figured that out, and it's quite effective. And I said, I can pay my own dinner. You don't need to take me out for dinner. I'm fine. I just rather have it effective. And that's a very weird way of doing business for salespeople who are used to a very relationship-based model. Now, we put it over the top when his very senior leaders, the CMO and the chief, he's now revenue officer, if I recall that right, wanted to meet. And I was afraid that if I don't meet with these two fine gentlemen, they're going to go start making random calls and senior executives. So I said, okay, I meet. Now, I have to state, I live in Switzerland. I just appear as I'm in the Bay Area. I work for the headquarters. I just work afternoons and nights and have telepresence at home. And our campus is so big, so most people never show up to a meeting in person anyway. So it doesn't really matter where you sit to do your work. For socializations and growing your career, you got to show up. That's why I go every quarter a week to San Jose, drink a lot of coffee, have a lot of dinners and lunches, take 6 pounds. So I said, okay, I'll meet with you. Fine. Jim and Mick, you go to the Salt Lake City office of Cisco. Bruce, you go to the Phoenix office. I'm in Switzerland at home, and my lead PM, Tom, is in London, and we'll do a telepresence. What do you mean? So that was as they share back with me, an experience to do a sales call in person, but not in person, so a virtual sales call. And I just think this further with the stuff they showed today, where this could all go, with this becoming immersive, with more customers and decision makers acting more like me. And again, I accept that I'm a bit weird, act more like the millennial, although I don't totally fit anymore that age bracket. But I'm personally pushing myself to be a bit out there, and there's a convenience aspect as well. So now, with that, to be able to live up to all these expectations, we believe selling has to become more digital. And we've chosen the term digital selling over virtual selling and all these other terms because that's the one that creates the least antibodies with our enterprise sales force. There's a big scare factor in this, right? When the machine will tell you what to do, and I'm a seasoned sales professional. I know my customer better than any machine will ever. But, well, no. So we started an initiative about a year ago building a digital strategy for the organization, and then out of that start to add specific projects. And that's very important for the second 30% of my job. So we try to unite the company that we can bundle the effort and the energy behind a common framework. And we're all in sales now, says Daniel Pink into Sell as Human. So when you want to go do something like this in a company the size of Cisco, 50% of people will say it's not very useful. They use other terms. And 50% of it, I have a better idea. So it was kind of an interesting 18 months journey to start with early ideas, try different things, pivot a bit left, pivot a bit right. We felt what would latch on with the executives. And there was a lot of executive schmoozing, getting people to buy into it, explaining each and every one that this is not a threat to their job, but it will make the company better. And because it was business-led, it was greeted with a mix of excitement and suspicion because, again, sales doesn't tend to be most structured. So when sales leads such an initiative that includes technology, IT and ops gets very worried because we could just run off and do stuff. That's one danger. Or we could kind of raise insane expectation, which they can never live up to. So that's kind of the big things. But we worked this up and down the chain and left and right, and pretty much every person above a vice president in the company has seen the story as it developed. We kept them updated, and we blogged, and we did everything you could do. And that was very purposeful because I was expecting all that resistance. The change management aspect and the buy-in, they will bring you down if you don't have a buy-in. And I mean, again, if you're a 1,000-people company, it's few people less, but the mechanics are likely the same. So the other thing which is our big thing is just somehow addressing the digital islands. We have all these great technology platforms in the company, and sometimes I think our IT strategy is we just buy everything that's around, and then we somehow try to make it work. And I'm not purposefully insulting our CIO. He's great, but again, it's the problem of as a service model where everyone just can go out and buy stuff. So what we have done is we positioned the strategy as a book with many chapters. We allow different people to write chapters in it as long as it still contributes to the story. That's a metaphor that went really well with a lot of people, we found. So what we have done is, as a basis, and this is a study we commissioned with the IMD Business School. We invest in something they're called the Center for Digital Business Transformation. So that's like a professor which is sponsored, and they do research on this topic. They came up with these 3-dimension, what they consider the cornerstones of digital business agility, hyper-awareness, informed decision-making, and that will lead to fast execution in the age of speed. You can Google that under Digital Vortex, so it's all public and free available. It's a lot of reading, but some good ideas what to do, how to digitize. And what we've done is we wrapped our story around it, starting with what we call digital interactions. That's like social selling profile, unclebrucey.com. Getting people inspired to do stuff. And I mean, Bruce, you were part of my little experiment here. Like, can I get you excited for something like this? And no offense, you're also slightly out of the millennial bracket, but I got you excited, and I got you to do it. And this will go a long way, right? So we do a social selling program on LinkedIn, Twitter, teach people not only to show up, how to prospect. They can sign up for it. If they sign up for it, we'll give them LinkedIn Sales Navigator license. We're now putting it into an account planning program that will go from there. That account planning becomes not just a chore, but something actually derives value, developing opportunities, thinking things through, then thinking about the execution plan, using digital methodologies like we have something called Sales Connect, which is a knowledge management or content feeding platform for our sales and our partners, where we were able to partner with marketing, so they feed it and they curate it. It gets rated. This is a big breakthrough in a company like Cisco. Marketing and sales actually really working together. I'm sure that's not a problem anywhere else. But it's actually lovely how they're very different, and now we somehow became friends. And that's one of the nice sides of my job. We introduced some tools like OneMob. That's a very little gentleman who worked at Salesforce one point in time, built his little startup, which allows you to record personal video messages directed to a customer, which when he or she clicks or responds, immediately creates an opportunity in Salesforce. It's very seamless and very easy. They have about 15 times the click-through rate than it would have on a normal email. We taken our demo capability virtual with dCloud, so be able to demo stuff to customers in a virtual way. So that's a big investment for us to make that happen. The nice thing about the interaction side, it works without connecting it to every corporate database. And again, this is where things get expensive, complicated, and you go into the 18, 24-month life cycles. However, we have to do it. We refer to this as insights. Again, 67% of the customer buying cycle happens online. How do you meet them earlier in the buying cycle? Again, marketing needs to work with sales. Again, we got to connect the data in the company, the customer 360, the knowledge with some actions, with some predictive analytics stuff we're toying around. So that's where we're launching a lot of projects to harness the immense amount of knowledge we have about the customer, but it's all these pockets that nobody knows. So this is where it gets very technical, data threading and getting all this together, and unique ID of the customer. These are things that even in a SaaS world, you can't outsource. This is heavy lifting. That's the double-digit million number projects in a company of our size. But it's almost we're buying ourselves goodwill with doing some of the cool stuff, which are easy to do, that when I come with a $20 million ask, I don't get shot right at the first stage. We're currently also doing a lot in terms of what we call management insights, so helping leadership to run the company and run the sales teams, working on a fundamental forecast transformation project where we'll be able to take a few hours out of every regional manager's time by just not having to go through all the opportunities and find out which are the bad apples and to go back in the forecast call every week. So that's some stuff we want to do on that side. And then as Cisco is transitioning from a very hardware based company into more of a software recurring revenues. We just announced earnings yesterday night. We're now at 28% recurring revenue, up from 25 a year ago. That's an important step for our transformation as a company. We need to be able to transact software. Not everything is a net 30 motion. There's longer term things which we need to be able to pull together. So these are then the really big investments we do. And there's not a lot of agile going on when you get to the transactional core of the ERP of a company of $50 billion. That's still waterfall run projects, and we better don't screw it up, otherwise we're in deep trouble. So that's that. This just to make it very real and specific. So what we do is we go then levels down, what's the project portfolio behind it. And the big breakthrough was in spring, where the head of sales took this into his 3-year long-range planning as a tenet of success, and that's when you get interest. And just about 2 weeks ago, this has been co-presented by VP Marketing and by my boss to sales leadership team in Cisco. And again, they came back still in good health and everything. So there's just this wonderful moment when things intersect, because sometimes you got to be lucky, right? We had changes in leadership and marketing, which led to more partnership. And digital is now cool and sexy, and everybody talks about it, and everybody throws around predictive and prescriptive, not that they understand what it means, but they get excited about it. So with that, you get permission to talk, and you get ultimately the fuel in the tank to do it. So how are we doing on time? What do you think? A couple more minutes. Which one do I want to do? Yeah, maybe this one. So when we talk about the customer 360 data, what we're trying to do, we're doing it brutally from an AM's point of view or from an RM's point of view, whoever is the user. And that sounds very common sense. I'm sure you all do it exactly that way. But when these projects are led by IT, they usually start with a tool and then solve a problem. And so what we're trying to do is decouple ourselves completely from the tool discussion, just start mapping what would be the steps from preparing for a customer interaction, understanding what they use today, getting into a portfolio management of what the customer has, being able to understand the details of the business, and then start mapping it all together. And very specifically, so understand what's our install base, that's Salesforce data, that's data, does the customer have any critical issues, what's the status of potential orders, what is the customer currently doing. That will allow us to come up with a better understanding where could there be opportunities, how can we triangulate, and we're experimenting with some predictive, prescriptive tools that will even give us hints where to go, but just bringing it all together and then using the collaboration tools to managers, to reps, when certain things happen. For example, a big case is opened, we get a push deal out, or an order gets delayed, or gets recommitted, or we're seeing the customer start, suddenly multiple people from the same customer start downloading white papers, so that we can alert salespeople that there's something going on. Again, when you start this on a 300 people company, you take an out-of-the-box solution that works wonderful. This times 17,000 people times 150 countries. To make this work and scale, that's where the magic is, and that just requires this extreme tight partnership with marketing, IT, and operations. Final example, and then a closure. I talked about forecast. We're obsessed with the sales forecast. We've taken it to an art. Run it every week, every month, every quarter. You got to commit, recommit, deliver. During the week, there are check-in calls. We put our product and service sales force together about 2 years ago. Looked at the old system, says this will cost us a lot of money to update it. Also, we have different inside sales and overlay sales functions, which today we cannot forecast. Maybe it's time for a transformation. So we started with saying we need a different roll-up model and a more flexible model to make it happen. And this is when we started engaging with InsideSales.com. And we haven't yet signed a deal. We're in the evaluation phase, so I paid my own hotel room. And then what we quickly discovered that part of the reasons why we complained that we don't get the value out of Salesforce we look like is because we only used it for opportunity management. We left it pretty much as a free-for-all. So the data in there is really lousy. I mean, the only thing is the total deal value, and that has no connection to reality. It's pretty much whatever the AM chooses to put in there. And that worked well. I mean, we became a $50 billion company with that approach. It's not that it was bad, but the amount of time our salespeople and our sales leaders invest in that process versus the value we get out of it, we just think there's so much more you could do with that. So the second step we're working on now is how do we get more quality data into the opportunity without putting more burden on the AM? And this is where we're trying to connect the quote from our CPQ system with Salesforce. We can import technology details and so, and again, times 80,000 people makes it a bit more complicated. But when we have this, this is called the 2 foundational steps, this is where it gets really sexy, and this is where I'm getting very excited because I've been in RM 4 years. I submitted 200 forecasts, and I hate it every week. And what we can do now with the predictive tools, and I'm looking at HD Forecast as one which we're looking at closely, runs through all opportunities and will tell me as an RM which are the bad apples. I have 10 reps, each has 10 to 15 opportunities. That's 150 opportunities. I have to go manually check and interrogate them in the Monday morning forecast call, ask questions, see if they are shaky or not. So it's a lot of art in it, which could be very easily replaced with science. So if I'd had something that would just tell me these are the bad apples, go look at them, and give, by the way, the same information to the AM, he or she would probably become smart over the course of 1 quarter and start managing his funnel much more self-sufficient, so I have to run less behind them. And I could start investing my energy as an RM actually in working on turnaround opportunities very specifically, and or working on funnel growth. Because one of the things that will happen, I think, we'll find out, is that when we clean the funnel, we'll see the commits go up initially with some people, so we got to work the funnel back up. But because both parties know, and there's no more, I guess salespeople find a way, but we hope there's no more cheating and trying to hide stuff, the process will just become more constructive, professional, nicer. I mean, we have a slight challenge in this very heart-driven forecast process, especially with yesteryear type of manager who used to rule by fear, that it can become difficult to retain millennial salespeople, especially females who don't necessarily like the macho style yelling around. So that approach, I think, will be a real game changer culturally how we run sales, and not at the expense of execution or value we produce. And finally, this is when we then can go lift off to outer space with predictive and prescriptive and connected with the production forecast and manufacturing, and have start adding currency fluctuations and what that means. Then once you have that base, technology advances so fast, you can I think within the next 5 years we'll be able to do extremely fancy stuff. So that's where we are in forecast. A few takeaways. We think getting marketing and sales to work together from the business side is an absolute imperative. Otherwise, don't even try, because then you will just sabotage each other. You can do a little bit on the interaction side, but anything insights will just go to hell. And then on the other side, working with ops and IT, connecting those digital islands and build them that way. It's kind of not fun going from Miami to Key West if the bridges are not there between the islands. And philosophical close, one of the best business books I read in the last 10 years from Stanley McChrystal is called Teams of Teams. He went into Iraq in 2004 running the Joint Operations Task Force, so that's the SEALs and the Rangers and so the top brass of special forces of the U.S. And even though he was much better trained, had more resources, better man, he got beaten up, I think that was the term, by Al-Qaeda. And he started synthesizing and analyzing what's the issue, and figured out that these highly decorated troops, they were really good in traditional warfare, traditional hierarchy, but they were outmaneuvered by an agile opponent that organized in small teams, very nimble, very flexible. So what he did, he brought everybody to the table, started sharing information, being very upfront with sharing information, very classified information, to the point where he had daily telebroadcasts every day to over 700 people, and he would abundantly share classified information. What's the plan, what they want to do. And then over time, the NSA showed up, the CIA showed up, Army intelligence, Navy intelligence, they all started sharing. And with that, they created that collective intelligence, they say. And it's a big leap, right? You see in each of your companies, that's the silos, and we're great, and they suck, and we're not going to tell you because you will exploit us. And that is something, because I don't have a horse in the product race, I started to do that as well. Just share the thoughts openly, be open to feedback and criticism, debate things out, and that has led to a large extent to us being able to work much better together with marketing. We, in a rapidly improving relationship with ops and IT. When we did this, when we started 2 years ago, we wouldn't even be in the same room. So it's we go off and do something and show it to you, and you're allowed to say, yes, it's great. That's what we call feedback. And now we're getting to a place where we're actually embedding people cross-functionally to actually really work it together. And that's just something I can only encourage people to do. It. Just putting an agile stamp onto the way you work will just turn into nobody commits to anything and everything will never be delivered. If you really get into this, that we try to act as a coordinated whole, then it will just be a real game changer. With that, hope I was able to inspire you a bit. Go try some of that things out. It's actually fun, and it's really easy to do. And thank you very much for your attention, and have a wonderful day. And if you want to connect to me on LinkedIn, feel free. I always like to meet new people, have a Twitter account. That's it.
Well, thanks very much, Thomas. And I found this tremendously interesting in the fact that Cisco was one of the generators or creators of the internet we recognize today, which transformed the way that people buy, which is now coming in full circle, forcing you to transform the way you do things.
Yeah, the monster we created now bites us.
Right, so I'd like to turn it over to the audience, please. If you have a question, please raise your hand.
I'm not going to register a URL on each of your names, so feel free. Just ask. I'll have a few more tricks I could take against you.
Sure.
Please go ahead.
What did you learn as you were trying to change it so that it was more predictive, so there was more actual information, so that the forecast would be more useful when you identify problem forecast? Have you moved through that phase to see what some of the key variables and key learnings are?
So let me think what's a good answer. So we're learning at the moment, so we haven't made the investment decision. We did all kinds of modeling and user studies, where to go. And so a peer of mine runs sales research. So what we're doing is we put out the thesis and then go validate it. We do mock-ups, we model it to find out what's working best. We haven't gone yet in terms of reaping the benefit on the forecast project. So there we're just submitted the business case, and we'll go into this. That's the deck I pitch internally, or that story to our investors. But we experiment with predictive in the Sales Connect platform, where we were able to look at opportunities based on certain characters, serve up content that would fit the deal. So bits of learning or stuff you could take to the customer. And after an initial intellectual resistance to I know my customer, we're seeing more and more uptake from our own salespeople and from our partners. They're actually using that because over time the tool gets actually smarter than searching it yourself. But there's an initial resistance we found with human beings to actually trust the machine. And so when I enter it in the search string, I trust it more than when I get it proactively served up. So And a lot of the predictive companies are forced to actually disclose some of their magic, how they do predictive, because then customers or users believe it more. Now this yields to very interesting things, because some of the predictive companies, they actually show you completely wrong stuff how they got to this, because they don't know themselves, because it's a machine learning thing, but they just give you some data point to make you believe you're able to understand how the machine did it. That leads to people buying much more into the concept. So that's some of the early learnings that we have. Well, with that, if there are no more questions, feel free to shoot me later. And with that, thanks for your interest. Have a wonderful rest of the day and a safe trip home.